Hello everyone. My name is Dr. Orvin, and this is going to be a little what do you call it? Kind of like a review of Control. Sorry, I'm a little blah at the moment. I recently finished playing Control. I'm just goofing around right now. I'm trying to avoid spoilery stuff. Let me just teleport over to I don't know ventilation area. Control, really fun game. Basically, what it's about is you play as Jesse Faden. She is looking into the disappearance of her brother. She ends up in this place called the Federal Bureau of Control, which is kind of like it's kind of like SCP. If you're familiar with the SCP Foundation and that whole little creative writing thing, it's kind of like SCP the game. It's got a little tinge of X Files, a little bit of Twilight Zone. If you're familiar with Alan Wake, it's made by the same people who made Alan Wake and the very underrated and underappreciated Quantum Break. And it's also set in the same universe. Uh, Without spoiling anything, yeah, it's kind of they're setting up a whole kind of like a universe. Like I said, I'm trying to keep spoilers to a minimum. Very destructible environments, as you can tell. I haven't got any There we go, combat. Combat is very dynamic in what you can do. These are low-level enemies, and I've already beaten the game at this point. So I'm pretty OP at this point. Okay, where are they? Okay, there they are. So yeah, combat is really action-oriented. You can shoot with this gun that has a various fire type. So you have a lot of options for, your firearm. You also have some psychic powers. One of the most useful ones is the one I'm using now, which is throwing your stuff at people. I don't have the audio on, just so you can hear me do this review. Uh, so yeah, as you can tell, gameplay is so fluid, so it's really exactly the kind of gameplay you want from a kind of like action, run and gun, shoot 'em. Plays exactly as you need it to. Plays and difficulty is very fair. There are challenging parts. You can always go back if you need to and backtrack. Kind of Metroidvania in some aspects. And so the story is fantastic, as you would expect from the people who made Alan Wake and Quantum Break. Uh, just really well written, well acted, well paced. And there's a lot of things you can find that are collectibles that add to the game lore. So, there's a little bit of that, lore hunting. If you're into that, you will find it here. One thing that really impressed me with the storytelling, it looked at one point, and I'm trying not to spoil it, so I'm trying to keep it as vague as possible. That they were gonna put in a pretty cliched twist to the story of Jesse's brother, and they set it up, and then I was worried that they would actually go through with it, but I was actually pleasantly surprised that they didn't. It's kind of one of those things that you're glad you're wrong, and it was good because the way they set it up, it was like so like, oh no, they're not going to do that, are they? And I feel with 90% of other games that would have set up something so obvious, they would have done that, but they didn't with this. And what they ended up doing was very clever. It was a good fake out. And there's some moments there that I didn't quite see coming. Some kind of that I saw coming, but were executed so well that I didn't mind that I could figure out what was happening. And one criticism I would have is that there is a lack of bosses where you would expect bosses to be. There are bosses. There are boss fights, but some of them are optional, as far as I can tell. You don't need to beat the game to get some of these to fight some of these bosses. Uh, but there are a couple of bosses that were mandatory. I would have expected there to be a couple more, which is fine. The way the game ended up playing didn't really need those bosses. Would it have been better without those bosses? Would it have been worse without those bosses? Hard to say. But if you're looking for like these epic boss battle, um, set pieces, you're gonna find yourself a little lacking. Although there are some really good ones, especially in the DLC missions. The DLC mission has one of the DLC missions that ties to Alan Wake is a remarkable boss battle. Like they could have done so much with this if they wanted to. So I'm gonna err on the side of they knew what they're doing because this is Remedy, and say that the lack of boss battles was deliberate, and that the lack of boss battles was done to serve as a better game. And the set piece that really caps it off is very unorthodox, but it is played to perfection. And it is a very Remedy set piece. I don't want to spoil it, but when you see it, you'll know exactly what I mean if you're familiar with Alan Wake at all. I really can't get into much more. Um, Progression is straightforward enough. It is a little collectathon-y. It is a little grindy. So there is some grind to it. You get ability. You upgrade your abilities through completing objectives in the game, but for upgrading other things like your weapon, you need I forget what they call them. What's the name of the money in this game? I don't wanna show too much, but I really cannot think of the name of the items of what they call it. No, that's not it. That's not it. Darn it. Yeah, I can't. I think they're called bits or something like that. But the money in this game, when you get it, and there's also like little crafting objects as well as items that you need to upgrade things. So there's that, and you also do have to complete objectives to get more abilities, and the abilities are what makes you really powerful. Like you can have a really good gun, you can have a really killer gun, but if you don't have abilities, you're gonna have a rougher time. I feel, and you can also just pick up mods for your gun or for yourself actually as well, just like that. But yeah, that's Control. And yes, I just did a review for a game that's been out for a while and's got a really rave notoriety. But if you still haven't played this game, please by all means do. It is not necessary to have played Alan Wake, though. If you have played Alan Wake and you haven't played Control, if you liked Alan Wake, definitely get this. If you didn't like Alan Wake, definitely get this. Unless you really hate, um, single player games, get this game. If you like single player games, even the slightest bit, that have really good story, this is. I cannot think of a reason why you would not want this game. Unless you just want only play multiplayer, unless you only play arcade style, unless you're very limited in your choices for games, you have no reason not to pick this up because it is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. If I were to rate this, I'd give it a 10 out of 10, honestly, because there's just so little I disliked about it, even at its most frustrating. I wouldn't say it's an all-time great, but it was a thrilling ride from beginning to end, and to give it a 9 would imply that there was some serious fault that I had with that, and really can't think of any. So yeah, 10 out. I'm gonna say 10 out of 10. Yeah, 10 out of 10. So that's about it. And yeah, review for Control. Really fun. Really fun. And I'm gonna just whoops, sorry about that. Tab out to get out of here, and there we go.